Hello chess friends and welcome to Zarov's chess channel and welcome to the Altibox Norway Chess tournament in 2020. We're now in the round 2 and the derby of the day was of course Magnus Carlsen versus Alireza Firouzja. Incredible match game. I always enjoy to watch them playing against each other because Magnus Carlsen is of course the world champion, the best player these days. On the other hand, Alireza Firouzja is really growing. He's becoming stronger and stronger, and also in this 2020, he already won a match game in the Banter Blitz finals against Magnus Carlsen, so in a direct duel. It was really the most tensed match game from this day, and the cool part was that Alireza Firouzja got a draw in the classical time format with the black pieces against Magnus Carlsen, so they had to play the so-called Armageddon game, and the Armageddon game is set up like this. White has 10 minutes on the clock, black has 7 minutes on the clock. After 40 moves, both of these players get a 1 second increment on the clock. So okay, it's a better concept than this other Armageddon setups in which black had, for instance, 4 minutes on the clock, white had 5 minutes on the clock, but without increments. So basically in this format, players shouldn't lose games because of time, but we'll leave that fact to this to the end of this video, because really a strange thing will happen in this game. So let's check out now the game. As I said, Magnus had to play against again with the white pieces and opened with the move d4, and Alireza responds with the move knight to f6. We have c4 and now e6. Knight to c3, d5. So far the queen's gambit declined. We have c takes d5, and after e takes d5 we have the exchange variation. And when I was younger, when I skipped from playing e4 to playing d4, the first move, I always liked to play the queen's gambit, of course. And my father once said to me, just try sometimes the exchange variation, because it sometimes gets your opponent out of preparation. And it's really so that sometimes black has an uncomfortable game after the exchange variation, because many times you're maybe studying some sidelines of the queen's gambit declined, or maybe the Slav defense, whatever defense you choose. But this exchange variation can be really annoying sometimes to handle, and Magnus proceeds of course with the most aggressive line, bishop to g5, attacking the knight on f6, which is of course the key defender of the d5. So if we take out the knight, you would be forced to take with the g pawn, and then you would have really a weakened pawn structure. So that's why c6 fixing the pawn, and we have now e3, h6, bishop to h4, and now bishop to e7. We have queen to c2. This is a very important move, because if you don't play that move, then black could maybe try bishop to f5 and then followed with knight from b to d7. I think this could be a good setup of blacks, and black could have a good chance in the continuation of the game. So black would equalize the game in an early stage of the game. So that's why queen to c2 also an attacking move, because in some occasions you will see that black will also move the queen to the c file, and then there may be some tactical threats on the c file if the queen moves to c7. But not that this move, as I said, is only an attacking move, it's also a prophylactic move which prevents this normal development of the like square bishop. So castling play by Alireza, we have knight to f3, rook to e8, and now bishop to d3. Now comes really a good line which releases the pressure, I think, a little bit in the game. Alireza played this very aggressive knight to e4, and what to do here? Bishop takes e7 was played by Magnus. Queen to e7. We have now a very nice support of our outpost, the knight on e4. We have bishop takes e4. Knight takes e4 is not a possibility, because you get the fork on the bishop and the knight. You will lose a piece, so that's why bishop to e4. But basically you don't have to even take. You could maybe even castle here, or maybe try even to queenside castle. But Magnus decides to simply get rid of the knight. After d takes e4, we have knight to d2. And what Magnus probably hoped for here in this particular line is that black is continuing the game with the bad bishop, sort of, because many pawns are on like squares. For instance, this centralized pawn e4, c6, also the b7. So if the bishop moves, for instance, somewhere to f5, then it couldn't have a good activity, because you have placed too many pawns on this same color square. So f5 played by Alireza, very aggressive move. That's why I really like to watch Alireza's games. Even if he loses some games, he gives us always an enjoyable game. He gives us always an aggressive setup. f5 immediately challenging Magnus Carlsen what to do. The best way here to proceed is simply normal castling, and black would proceed with something like knight to d7, knight to c4, maybe knight to f6. So still black has good chances, but the problem is always the weak e5 square. That's Magnus Carlsen's clear target, the weak e5 square, because you have advanced your f pawn, you don't have any more d pawn, so you couldn't kick away a potential knight outpost on e5 with any pawn, or you can only kick it away with the knight. But here Magnus goes into aggressive line with queenside castling, and now from this point on black is better. So this is not a good move by Magnus. I'm not sure about his preparation in this line, but from this point on, really Alireza Firouzja has a comfortable game, and he continues normal development with knight to d7. We have g4, and Alireza simply takes f takes g4, knight takes e4, and now knight to b6. Okay, what white has here as an advantage is of course the pawn central control. It means white has 2 pawns in the center, so what we want to do is improve them, improve the pawn on e3, get it somehow to e4, and control really the center all over the board. On the other hand, I think black's activity of the pieces is much better, because this knight, they shouldn't be placed like this, aiming against each other. So as I said, black has, I think, a better activity with the pieces. Now the main idea is bishop to e6 and get this knight on a very active square on c4, and maybe support the attack with queen to b4. So it's already dangerous here for white. Knight to g3 was played, and now comes this move, bishop to e6. King to b1, we have rook to f8, very nice move. So I really like the style by Alireza. He didn't rush into attacks. He improved really first his pieces. First he wants this to get his rook on the best files, on the best squares. Now also maybe something like rook to e8, and then when we have really the pieces on the best squares, then it's really time to strike. So e4, Magnus plays on his idea, but again, it's maybe not the best of moves. Maybe something like rook from h to g1, maybe trying something like h3 and opening the g file, or maybe f3 or similar ideas. We want to have at least some kind of an attack, maybe something like, as I said, h3, and maybe knight to h5 could be much stronger to get some kind of a counter attack. Here with the move e4, okay, as I said, you have really this 2 centralized pawns. You have this pawn central control. You're controlling the center of the board, but these pawns sometimes they're called the hanging pawns. When you get 2 connected pawns in the center, they can also be an object of your opponent's attack. So basically, from this point on, these pawns are getting weaknesses, because here Alireza plays this normal idea, rook to d8, simply attacking the pawn further. We have rook from h to e1, and now queen to f6. Normal idea, simply simple threat, attacking the weak pawn on d4, and now f4. Here, really annoying move, but Alireza is not scared about this move. He simply takes en passant, and still this pawn on d4 is a target. We have queen to f2. You see the problems that Magnus is already in the position. This is now an advanced pawn. These pawns are weaknesses. They can be attacked. In the game, knight to c4. You see the pieces are getting better and better. Rook to g1, and now we have queen to h4, simply attacking further. What we want to do also is to include maybe a rook here on f4, getting this knight maybe on better square if the position allows it. For instance, if we could target somehow this weak e3 square, so the queen is a little bit stuck to the defense of the e3 square, but also to the defense of potential pawn push here on f2. So b3, kicking away the knight, knight to d6, king to b2, and now rook to f7, simply supporting our advanced pawn. We're coordinating now our attack simply against this very around this very nice pawn on f3. We have rook to d2, and now rook to f8. Simply healthy chess that Alireza Firouzja is playing here. All of the pieces are really on good squares, although they're a little bit restricted by these 2 centralized pawns, but still this knight is centralized, this bishop is centralized, the queen is active, the rooks have created a battery. Great setup so far. Rook to e1, we have king to h8, and now rook to d3, and now rook to f4. Simply attacking further weaknesses. Here e5 was played, and now knight to f5. Knight from c to e4, we have bishop to d5. You see again an improvement of the position of the bishop. Very nice setup. And now rook takes f3, and this was now the critical moment of the game, because here Alireza had, I think, it's not a winning sequence, but I think it's much better than that move that he played. In the game he played knight takes g3, but the better move here after rook to f3 is simply to take the rook on f3. After queen to f3, we could try queen takes h2. So you see the queen is deflected now from the defense of the pawn. You could cover maybe, but now comes really a great move. Queen takes g3. If you try queen to f5, then we can simply take rook takes f5, knight takes g3, and now rook to f3 is, I think, much better here for black, because we have two connected pass pawns, and I'm not sure how Magnus Carlsen could handle this position. So after the move, instead of the move queen to f5, you could also try queen takes g3, but a similar idea will happen after knight takes g3. Again, rook to f3, we have reached the same position, and here it was really a clear tactic that unfortunately for Alireza he missed. He could have proceeded like this. This bishop is very nice, it's centralized, it's also creating a very nice defensive setup here, because this is a dangerous pass pawn. But I think with these two connected pass pawns on the king side, black has really a comfortable game. So as I said, after rook to f3, Alireza plays knight takes g3. Not the best of moves. We have h takes g3, now rook to f3, queen to f3, and now rook takes f3, and now g takes h4. Still, this is a similar line, but I hope you realize in this other line, white doesn't have anymore the pawn on the h file. It's now an equal game. The evaluation is equal here, so both players should play now for a draw, and a draw simply fits here for Alireza, as this Armageddon game is played, so it's also a good position still for Alireza. So bishop to f4, Alireza simply releases the pressure, hopes now really for a draw. We have king to g8, king to a3, king to f7, and now h5, very important move. What we want to do is to play rook to g3. This was a nice move, a nice endgame move by Alireza. We want to play rook to g3 and then rook to g4, creating a pass pawn. Now it's really time to create pass pawns to deflect the king a little bit from the defense. And now we have a4, king to e6, very nice centralizing move with the king. We have a5, and now rook to g3. a6, this was not the best of moves by Magnus. He should have proceeded here with the move king to c4, simply getting the king more towards the center. Now after the move a6, you can really pass through here with the move b6, and the king cannot infiltrate on the other side of the board. White has lost a little bit of a tempo now, which gives now after king to c4 Alireza finally the opportunity to play here the move rook to g4. But even now this king to c4 is really not the best of moves, because the better move is now to play rook to f4. After something like rook to g4, getting simply behind the pawns, you have to play for a draw. But still, black is slightly better here, because first we can take, and now we can go back with the rook. That's the most important technique here, to realize getting back. Never allow Magnus Carlsen to take one of these pawns, and I think even this position black has a comfortable game. So as I said, king to c4, not the best of moves, because now rook to g4 happened, and now king to d3, and now rook takes rook to g3 with a check. Now comes really the critical moment. Rook to g3 is not the correct move here that Alireza played. He should have proceeded with a very nice move c5, but he didn't play that move. He was low on clock. He had like 15 seconds on the clock. It was really intense, incredible endgame now, really blitz game sort of, and Magnus Carlsen was also around 50 seconds on the clock. Here after this move c5, what white could do is maybe to take the pawn, take the rook on g4. After h takes g4, we see king to e4, but now we can simply take. We have split the pawns, and that's now really now a winning endgame here, because black can simply take this pawn, and the cool part is we can go after this pawn and create a pass pawn situation, and it's a winning endgame. So even if you don't react, if you for instance play after the move c5 something like king to e3, if you don't react here, then you get king to king to f5, and now you have to react again. You have to trade off the rooks here. After rook to g4, we have h takes g4, and we have created again a pass pawn situation. If you try d takes c5, d takes c5, but now we have a pass pawn situation, and I think black is simply winning here. So but okay, as I said, Magnus Carlsen is Magnus Carlsen when it comes to endgames. Here Alireza missed his chance. After the move king to d3, he played rook to g3, first a check. We have rook to e3, and now again rook to g4, but now Magnus finds really this drawish line, rook to f3. But again, draw is not enough for Magnus Carlsen. He has to win this endgame, but I'm not sure how, because this king is very well placed. It never allows this pawn to make progress. In the game c5, now finally played by Firouzja, but it was too late because after d takes c5, we have b takes c5, rook to f8, and now king to e5. It's again a drawish endgame, but now after rook to f7, you won't believe what happened. Alireza Firouzja ran out of time, so he again lost on time against Magnus Carlsen. The same thing happened to him in the World Blitz Chess Champion in 2019, in which he had really a great game and he lost the game because of time. He was playing really slowly in the end of the game. He had like 1 second on the clock and he didn't know what to do, and suddenly his time ran out. Unfortunately for him, because he had really great chances to beat the world champion in the round 2. Incredible stuff. I'm a little bit sad that happened, because I think Alireza has deserved here to win the match game, because also in the classical time format game he played really an outstanding game without complications. He got his draw very easily, and he deserved his draw. Now in this game I think he deserved really at least a draw. So Magnus got out a little bit with murder sort of, and he won now the match game against Alireza. So, okay, what to say? Great game, great Armageddon game, but we should really consider how to make these tournaments happen. Without these Armageddon games, there's simply too much pain around this Armageddon games. Yesterday, 11 Aronian also lost the game in the Armageddon. So I'm not sure, but we should really search maybe for different solutions when the game ends in a draw. I don't think that's the way we should make this happen, because the Armageddon is really a brutal game, and it's like 11 Aronian said, it's really like a penalty shootout in football. When you face this Armageddon game, anything can happen. So unfortunately for Alireza, he lost now the game against Magnus. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot, but still a great performance by the young Iranian. If you want to see more games from this tournament, check out my Altibox Norway chess tournament coverage. Here is the link. And if you want to see the best chess games of all time, check out my best chess games of all time series. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.